I have a story I want to share with you. I heard this morning and I thought to myself, this is something that I got to share because this just doesn't quite make any sense. There's a park and it needed some work or updates or this done or that done, and they bring in a backhoe and started digging a hole. And they find some bones. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, that's might not be a problem. But you see, these are human remains, not animal, not a dinosaur, nothing like that. This is human remains. Now, can you imagine digging a hole and finding a body? Well, here's the thing. Before this was a park, this was a cemetery. A very old cemetery that eventually got filled up, and it held over 500 people. Now, once it got filled up, whoever owned it or was in charge of it or whatever said, hey, I got a great idea. Why don't we change this cemetery into a park? Now, to put salt onto wounds, once you lose somebody and you say, hey, I want their body to be rested in this cemetery, you pay money to do so. Well, this plot of land, they wanted to change into a park. So what'd they do? They turned around and said, if you want the bodies removed, you need to pay for them. So you need to pay more money to move the bodies that you paid to put in there in the first place. Does that make any sense? Whose heads up, whose ass that thought that was a great idea? So naturally, not everybody could afford to move the bodies. So what they did was dug up a restful person that's in a grave that should have been there in the first place. Because that is where they chose to put their loved one. Now, whose bright idea was it, first off, to turn this into a park and not remove all the bodies and just make them all disappear? Out of sight, out of mind? Is that what's up? You know, I feel bad for all these people that go to a park because it used to be a cemetery and that's where their loved one's at. What about somebody that wants to go and find a loved one from generations from now and can't because it's in a park and not a cemetery where it belongs, where a cemetery is supposed to be, right? Where all the bodies are supposed to get moved. It shouldn't be up to the loved ones to pay for that. You want to change a cemetery into a park or change it into whatever, I guess it is what it is, but you better make sure all the bodies get moved. So now there's crime scene tape around this. It turns out that it's a cemetery. Now they got to bring in a bone expert to go through and to get these remains out. Now they're not going to remove any more remains. But it turns out that there's over 300 more bodies in this park that has been there since it turned into a park in the first place. Now, who's the genius that thought that was a great idea? That's what I want to know. And all of a sudden, it's this, aha moment. If I dig a hole on my property, I have a phone number I have to call. If I dig up something, anything at all, that I shouldn't be digging up, guess who gets in trouble? Me. I get in trouble. I dug on my property that I own, and I'll get in trouble if I rip up something I shouldn't have ripped up because I should have had it surveyed, I should have had it scanned, I should have had something done, which, by the way, is free in my state. It's free to have this service come out and scan the property to make sure that there's no wires or hoses or whatever underground so that you don't accidentally rip up something you shouldn't. It's free. So who's the genius that wanted to turn this into a park that didn't want to remove all the bodies because they weren't getting paid enough to do so? And who is the genius that said, well, we're going to dig a hole in this park without having it scanned where you're going to dig the hole at, considering it's free where I'm at? It don't cost you anything. Free? It's like breathing air. Free. Right? So I just don't understand all this. I hope somebody's going to get in trouble for this. Because right now it's just standing like, oh, well, there's a bunch of bodies in this park and they didn't get removed because the family members of the loved ones that are there couldn't afford to move the bodies, so we just left them there and covered them up out of sight. No one even knows, right? No one's going to know. Seriously? Seriously. That's what we're doing now? We're going to move a cemetery, charge more money to people that can't afford it in the first place, charge them again in the second place that they still can't afford it, and then when they can't afford it, you're just going to go, oh, well, no big deal. It's not my loved ones that are there. Seriously? Try having a little respect. Try having a little respect for the people in the grave, but have a little respect for the people that are still alive, the relatives. Because I think this is a really, really unfair deal. Really unfair. I mean, I don't know who's the super genius behind this whole kabacle, but there's a problem. There's a flaw in the slaw, so to speak. So, I don't know what they're going to do to fix this. Maybe if I find out, you'll find out. But I'm telling you what, this is way not fair, not right. And I don't understand why it's a crime scene when they know it's a cemetery. Now, I know technically they probably have to bring in some bone expert because it is human remains, regardless if they know what it is or not. But it just seems awful silly that they're considering it a crime spot, right? Crime scene. When there was no crime. Somebody was buried there legally. Somebody was buried there in a grave that they wanted their loved ones to be. And some super genius removed all the headstones and said, it's a park now. Why? Because they could make more money? The money that they made on there ran out because they couldn't put no more bodies in there. And now all of a sudden they're all like, hey, we got to make more money, so we're going to charge them to remove the bodies. And then we're going to charge them and sell this property to the state or whatever, the township, so they can make a park out of it or donate it. Maybe that was the whole thing. Well, we're donating this property and we want to make as much money as we can, so we're going to charge them to put bodies in there, and when it gets filled, we're going to charge them to take the bodies out because we want to make it into a park? Is that what happened? Is that what's going on? Because that's what it kind of feels like to me. Feels like somebody was just a little hungry for money and wanted to do whatever they could to get it. I got a great idea. If you got to move a cemetery, why don't you try removing all the bodies, regardless of what the cost is? If you own a cemetery and you're going to move it, then it's on you to move the bodies, not the people that have the loved ones in there. It's up to you. Now, this isn't the first time I've heard of this or seen this, because there's been other places that have gotten altered one way or another, and they don't remove the bodies. They just remove the headstones and do whatever they want over it. You should probably look that up. You'll probably find some very interesting places that still have dead bodies underneath there because it once was a cemetery. So until next time.